And the next one is how to involve and learn from mentors, clients, and investors. And I will be right back. Okay, they're here. They're here. It's good. We're good. So our guests for this panel are Shannon. He runs the global operations for Startupbootcamp in UK, in addition to managing a family office's venture. Hello, Andrew.
Hey.
And his specialties are high growth, business operations, entrepreneurship, marketing, due diligence, social media, and online communities.
See, in LinkedIn, people just give you those, so they're not accurate normally.
Oh, okay, so what's accurate then? You make your own introduction.
I help companies, so through the Accelerator specifically.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's focus on Startup Bootcamp then.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. Rokas, Tamošiūnas, I'm sure I'm not saying your name right. I'm sorry.
That's good, fine.
Hello, welcome.
Hey. Hi.
How do you say your name?
Rokas Tamošiūnas.
Rokas Tamošiūnas. See? I can do it. He's the managing director of Startup Highway. He's taken the steering wheel behind a new and ambitious initiative to bring world-class best practices to entrepreneurs of the region. You are based in...
I really should update that on LinkedIn. I have like years to do to update my LinkedIn profile.
You guys should, because these descriptions are very long.
Here's a quick tip. Guys, update your LinkedIn like every 2 or 3 months at least, so accidents like this don't happen, but yeah.
Okay, I'll make you make your own introduction then. Please introduce yourself.
I just love to help founders. That's about it.
See, I like that so much better. I know. So you guys like to help founders. Okay, so Jens Pippig, do you like to help founders? Sure. Yes. Jens Pippig, he likes to help founders. Hi, and welcome. And he is the head of strategy and operations at Pro7 Sat1 Media. Correct. So welcome to the panel. Okay, so you are 3, yeah. You're ready? Okay, how do you enjoy the event so far? I didn't really get a chance to talk to any of you. You're mainly in the...
Well, this is about networking. You should approach us and so on. It's a great event. I love the crowd.
Yeah, that's good.
Party last night was fun.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Made it here by like 1, so...
Okay, I heard it went on until like 3:30, something like that. Yeah, I wouldn't know. Cool. So, okay, let's talk about how to involve the mentors, clients, and investors in a team, to make a team better, to make the product better in the end, and how to maintain a constant knowledge flow between the startups and the key people, that are surrounding them. So for that, we can start with explaining what is the role of a mentor in a startup. How many startups are you mentoring right now, each of you?
In the Pro7 Sat1 Accelerator, we have 13 companies. 7 are in the current class, 6 have graduated that we still keep contact with, and so I personally mentor 3 of the startups and oversee the other investments that we've done, and I think that's also key to good mentoring, is that you have enough time that you can spend with the startups. If you don't have enough time and you don't really dedicate resources to coaching the startups, it's not worthwhile for neither you nor the startups.
Okay.
All right, how many? So I'm constantly engaged about 24 startups, and I constantly meet new startups. I know, events like this, about 20 a week or so.
Okay.
We have 125 in our portfolio, so you could say to a certain degree I've been involved with mentoring all of those. Probably 10 to 20 reach out specifically and say, I'd like you to be one of our core mentors.
Okay, so you keep in touch with the startups that are part of the program since the beginning, and you always help them when they need it?
Yeah, and actually that's something I see not enough startups doing, I think, is even asking to, for our programs, for instance, you have an opportunity to meet more than 100 mentors maybe. But what I don't see a lot of startups doing, even through these events, is reaching out and saying, will you be actually one of our core, let's say, team of 4 to 6 mentors? And can I list out some bullet points what that enables? For instance, meeting us every month, talking every week, something like that. So from my personal perspective, and all of us looks like on stage, we talk to startups every day almost. Whether they convert into actual advisory board or hands-on mentors, a very few percentage of them, I have to say.
Okay. How can a startup find the right mentor? Because it's tricky, right? You go to an accelerator, but you might have the chance to not meet anyone that has a background knowledge about what you are actually doing, what you're building.
I think it's a cumbersome and time-consuming process to, you have to invest time. You don't get it on a silver plate, and it's the responsibility of the startup to, find and approach the right mentors. The mentors are also trying to find the right startups, but there is no full transparency. You can attend a lot of events, but the moment you attend one event, you probably miss out on another one. And it just takes patience, and you have to pitch 100 times, and then eventually you will find the mentor that is best for you. So it's a numbers game in the end.
Okay.
So we do a lot of coaching for our startups to, in essence, enable personal connections. And that's something that I think is the most difficult thing to do, especially if you only have a half an hour. So there's lots of small tips, like taking hand notes, for instance, instead of on a computer, so you feel engaged and so forth. But if you meet a ton of different mentors, if you can raise your chance by 20% doing some of these little tactics to actually have a personal, intimate conversation with somebody, I think that's the best way to do it from my perspective. The ones that I'm involved with, I actually like the people. I could see going out and having a pint with them and so forth. So I think that's the best advice for startups. If somebody's relatively involved in the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem, they've done interesting things in their lives, you can really have good advice from lots of different angles, but if you don't have a personal connection, it'll never last. So. Okay.
Rokas, in Lithuania, it works a little bit different, right? Like, how do you connect the startups with the right mentors? Because Lithuania is a small country.
Right, in that sense we have a mentor fleet of about 200 mentors. 100 of those are out of the region, we fly them in. So we work pretty much the same as the other guys. I'd like to address your initial question, and I'd like to offer a crowd a tip. Mentorship essentially is a taking game. As said, a lot of people know a lot of things from different angles, and they can be your clients, be your investors, be your advisors, be your technical help, whatever, at least forward your connection to people, but they don't necessarily realize themselves how could they be useful for you. And if they walk away from a table after 20 or 40 minutes conversation without having given you all the value they could give, for them it's just another 40 minutes. They do this as a pro bono activity anyway. For you, it's an opportunity missed. So when approaching mentors, is it later today or is it whenever that you're being mentored, looking at what can you take? Try and probe the person. All right, are you interested in my product? Are you interested in investing? Can you lead me to customers? Can you lead me to new markets? Can you lead me to investors? Whatever can happen. And as said, there are so many angles that this can happen from. Somebody knows everything about what you're doing because he's been in the industry for 10 years, and somebody knows nothing, and you can try your pitch on him and see where you don't explain things clearly and so on and so forth. And it's only up to you how much value you take from that conversation, even if you're not going to see that person ever again in your life. It's a taking game. And at the end of the day, finding the right mentor, no matter even on paper, it's a perfect match. Like the person is super experienced, super right connections and so on, everything, and even an investor, and you would so love to have him in your team. Maybe once you actually sit down and talk to him, you find out that the mechanics doesn't work. He has a different view, he has different ways of doing things. Maybe it's just different, maybe he's not the guy you're looking for. So once, do your background research on people you want to talk to, and talk to a number of them. As said, it's a numbers game at the end of the day. It boils down to chemistry.
Okay, so from what I understand, all of you have a multiple number of startups that you are mentoring. So how can the startups approach you without overwhelming you? Without, 125 startups to mentor is a lot. So how can they approach you without overwhelming you?
So a little personal touch goes a long way. And I'll give you, for example, did you guys mentor yesterday in the speed dating. So I mentored, I think, 8 teams, and I don't think one of them either tweeted me or followed up via LinkedIn. I think those are the basics. So 2 of 3 of us at least didn't have that experience. So I didn't connect personally with anybody yesterday. I talked to people and I gave them my advice and they seemed nice and maybe I'll see them again. But without a follow-up within 12 hours, there's very, very little chance that I'll be involved with any of those startups. You know, I'd encourage them to apply for our programs, but on a personal level, you know, some of those little things really matter.
Okay.
I think that's a very, very good point. Overwhelming might be a fear that people might think we have, but that's, I mean, at least to me, that's not the reality. The reality is that I offer my help to a lot of companies, even the ones that are in our accelerator, and I say, if you have questions, send me an email, follow up, and get on my nerves. That's what I explicitly tell them, because that leads to the fact that they at least approach me every now and then. Because if I don't do that, they are usually too scared to follow up, to ask questions or whatever. But I mean, that's the thing that I always say to the teams that are in our program. I mean, you guys are the managers. You guys are the CEOs of your startups. You have to do what you think is right. I'm not running your business. If I wanted to run your business, I would start it myself. I can only help you, but for that, you have to approach me and ask for my advice. I'm not pushing it onto you. I'm, you know, giving you the authority to approach me and demand it from me. That's what I can offer.
So do you reply to every email that you get from people asking for mentorship? Because then there's the fear of rejection as well. Like, this is probably why they didn't approach you, because they felt like, you know, you're somebody that's very important and you have, you know, a certain fame. And I'm not going to write them because who am I, you know, to, I don't know, but I think so. I
personally respond to every email that I get that asks for mentorship. Maybe it's a rejection, but then I give them advice for why I first of all, I explain why it's not right, or I point them in the right direction. So I don't just say no and that's it.
Or ignore them.
Yeah, no.
Okay, good.
Right, well, there are, well, granted, most of the startups don't follow up or are afraid maybe we're not the right type or whatever. Just by knocking on the doors, you might get surprised. You know, if you knock on 10 doors and one of them is really amazing, he'll get back to you and that will make your day. So I just second the opinion here. Go ahead and do that. However, once actually starting work with somebody, people kind of like really active startups might end up in the danger of overwhelming, just dumping lots of data, lots of emails, lots of files and information towards your mentor. That's risk. I like that saying that guys are actually managers of your company. So one of the things you have to manage is the communication, and you have to manage information. Kind of think about how you would like the information be presented for you. Say you've spoken to somebody like a week ago, and then you want to follow up and, hey, look, I follow up with a bunch of guys you actually pointed me towards, and we've done this and that. There is like 20 software updates, and there is this social media update, and 20 other topics, and so on. If you put that all in an email, it looks a rather lengthy email. Probably nobody will ever read it. But I know if you use bullet points, if you aggregate, if there is something really important, like I'm attaching my pitch deck, I'm attaching my cash flow projections or something, put it on a separate files, on attachments, or better yet, on Google Drive or similar service. Just try to think how you would like to get the information. Try to stage it. I start with the sentence, hi, I'm sending you this and a list of things I've done. Then go with a, I don't know, maybe a summary digest of 10 points. So I've done this, I've done that, I'm attaching this, I met these guys, and so on. And then start including large information or offload that all into attachments or Google Drive. So managing the communication, being a good manager of that, typically tips whoever is receiving, is it the mentor or whoever else, for instance, investor. If you're good at those things, that typically means that you're good at a lot of other things, and managing connections and understanding how other people feel about you, which can really lead to more engagement and more positive outcomes. Judging from my portfolio startups, some of the guys really load me lots of stuff, but the most successful startup, that's the most expensive today and raises money whenever they need them, they're like super cool at managing the information they give me with. Like, they have these automated reports and everything, and they're all digested in a way that's like really easy for me. So I suppose there is a link between the two, and if you appear like somebody who does that, you know, you're more likely to raise more interest.
Thank you. I think it's very important, this is just my opinion, that I think it's very important for startups to have mentors, starting from the beginning, like find the right person that has the background and the knowledge that you need and have them on board. And there's this misconception, that people that are important will not pay attention to you, but I think that everybody should get over that. And I've been through that as well, like I lived near Bradfeld for 4 years and I never wrote him an email even though he was in the same community. And then I met him in real life and I'm like, oh, you're so cool, like I was scared to email you, like I wasn't like, how could you meet me, why would you care? And he was like, why? And then, like he was very open and very warm, and this is something that I love about the startup community, is that people that, you guys are doing this out of passion, you want to help other people, and they should learn that, they should know that they can use you for their advantage.
I think, so you said startups should have mentors, and I think it should more so be entrepreneurs should have mentors. I mean, coming out of uni even, you should have some mentors. I have probably between 4 and 6 personal mentors that I reach out to on a quarterly basis, I'd say, that I would like to think if I did a startup, they would continue to be my mentors, part of that startup. But I mean, reaching out when you're already doing a startup, it almost feels a little late. You should have that personal connection with people regardless, I think. So maybe the key is starting a little bit earlier as well. If you're just thinking about an idea right now, pinging it off somebody and maybe that becomes a mentor relationship. And
it's a two-way relationship, right? Like you guys are learning as well from the startups, even though they are newer in the field, and I'm sure that you learn all the time the ways things work. Okay, so moving on to the clients. How can clients be incorporated as key stakeholders throughout a startup's development?
I think it's important to make sure that you interact with your customers or potential customers early on and give them the opportunity to shape your product or service, because that makes them such a strong advocate of what you're building, so that they feel almost obliged to buy it. And you're solving their problem in the end. I mean, you're only anticipating that there is a need for a product, but the person that can really determine what the need is the one that is actually paying for it. So I'm a big fan of having, some kind of boards, advisory boards, sales meetings or whatever with the people that buy the service in the end. And they usually like to meet the other guys of their competitors in a more casual environment, and then discuss industry trends or whatever as well, so everybody benefits from it. And usually all it takes is send out an invite and prepare some coffee and a bit of food, and that's about it.
Okay.
Right, I'd say there are a couple of scenarios where engaging with customers are a really cool thing. Obviously, early on, where you're building the product, when you're modifying, beta testers, closed groups, that sort of like reaching out to your customers and understanding what they want and how they want to use your service is absolutely key. So you involve here as a hands-on mentors, as a field test, as a beta testers, whatever. So we all know this. Another interesting scenario is at the other end of the company life, when you are looking for an exit, say you're already funded or when they're without a funding, if you're into B2B area or into similar space, if you have large customers, industry-related partners and customers, iterating with that might lead to them acquiring you. I know of several companies that sold themselves to their biggest customer. So if you're working with some really big corporate, or Microsoft or someone the likes of them, you might want to start engaging with them and start feeding information about their company, how you're doing, your structure, your management team, even that's outside your regular sales pattern. So that's kind of 2 scenarios that you want to keep in mind when thinking, when should I let my customers know about my company than a regular customer should know. Couple tricks here though. As Ford said, if I had listened to my customers, I would have built a faster horse. So you want to build cars, not horses. So early on, you might know better than your customer. That's like a bad advice. It's a really dangerous slope to trip on, but keep that in mind. Another thing is typically when you engage with a mentor for a long term, at the end of the day, you end up giving a little bit of something like equity or so. Equity is an asset. You have a limited amount of it, and you share with it, you pay with it when you can't pay with cash, and you share it with the people you really want to share. So, be mindful, especially if you are into B2C or C2C area. The first 100 guys might be like really super sus and nice to you early on. on, but when you have 10 million customers, they're like less than 1% of your user base. So you want to be careful about your equity, who you give to. You should always share that, and you should always share that with stakeholders and key people in your business, but just be careful about how handing that one out to the first customers right and left.
I have a suggestion, which I guess doesn't really align with what you guys said. It's similar, but I think what's worked for me is making friends with my customers and not asking them anything about what I'm doing in a product perspective, but taking somebody out to dinner and saying, hey, what do you think about the industry? And really, I remember specifically repeating to myself, don't talk about your product or your company at all. And at the end of the day, it seems like those are the people who a week later come back to me unsolicited and say, you know, your product really sucks in this way. You know, and it would be a very specific thing, and I'd say, well, we'll do it for you. You know, we'll make that. The couple of companies that we use for Startup Bootcamp across all of our companies that I give the most feedback to, they almost never really directly ask me for it. They'll come over and have coffee with me, and they'll send me different contacts and so forth, but they're not necessarily soliciting specific advice. They're just making friends with me to a certain extent, and I care about these people now, and I say, hey, these guys just contacted me, maybe you can use them, and it's almost the connection game kind of thing. So maybe that's another tactic, is just take your customers out to dinner. Don't talk about your company. You know, provide some information about the overall industry that they find useful, and don't follow up with, hey, what do you think of my product? Follow up with, it was great talking to you, let's do it again sometime.
I actually know a startup who built their client base for like 2 years, but they never really built a really good mobile product or anything, but the people are there. They have over 5,000 people waiting for them to actually launch that for a long time. So because of that, I think that it's really important to create that close connection to your clients. And yesterday, there was a startup that their idea was to create a third-party social media platform, you know, for social media experts to take over the communications from a company and interact with their clients. But that to me feels like it's removing that, you know, connection. And one company that was really good at using their clients, you know, and their feedback is Zappos, right? Like, this is how they got so big, is because they were so good at making their clients feel special and, you know, like they're part of something. So what do you think about, you know, the direct interaction? And when you say that, you know, take them for dinner, like, I'm sure that a lot of people are like, yeah, but I have 1,000 clients. How to pick which one to take for dinner?
I'd like to second that opinion. I mean, that's a really great advice. It's more of a sales kind of advice, but still very good. At one point in my life, I set up a company which was an IT service company. And it's so weird that all my customers were my friends. That is, they became my friends first, and only then they bought my service for one reason or another. So first they sold to friends and so on and therefore. But I really invested in developing the relationship beyond just work and so on. And in most cases, I was actually focusing on stuff other than work. And most of those guys, actually some of them were investors and so on, most of those guys carried on with me into a number of other businesses I went on, and I'm still in touch with a number of them from back in the day. So this is really cool advice in terms of, you know, how you value and how you network yourself. Invest in friendship, and invest in connections, invest in relationship. That's always a good advice.
And you can do that from the beginning. Like Steve Blank says, get out of the building. You know, get out there and talk to your clients and do a really good research. Don't focus and like stay inside your, you know, office or apartment and work on your product and then like ta-da, like the big launch, and like nobody uses it because you didn't do a really good customer research.
Yeah, so you said, how do you choose? And I guess I would say, why would you have to choose? You know, so, I mean, Steve Blank has this class for 3 months, right, where scientists come in for 3 months and they talk to like 150 potential clients. And it's, you know, get out of your office, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to believe. I mean, maybe in some companies you're truly so overwhelmed where you couldn't meet everybody, but I haven't met many of those companies. And I'm pretty sure that if you meet 10 people a day for a couple months, you're gonna figure out, you know, which ones are your core clients and so forth. So I'd say meet with everybody if you can.
Okay.
There's a risk there. You get fed up with new people.
And typically, you don't have tens of thousands of customers from the start, right? I mean, if you do, you're in a very fortunate position. But usually, I mean, you probably know all your customers, all your users, every stakeholder personally, or at least you could for the first months of your business. And I mean, why not interact with them? Send them an email, call them up, or whatever. I mean, it's not that complicated. It's uncomfortable for some people. Some people don't like to interact with people, but maybe that's the issue, not that you couldn't do it.
Okay. And do you think that when you reach a certain stage, like when you're not a startup per se anymore, is it okay to use those third parties, social media experts and networks, or do you always have to keep really close to your clients and keep in touch with them?
I think you have to stay real. Nobody really expects Google to really care on an individual basis for their users. I mean, that's not what I, as a user, would imagine them doing, but I believe it has to be authentic. If you still can do it, or if you want to sub-segment your users and say you are now part of our whatever special group or whatever, then you need to have personal interaction. But I think, for every size of user group or whatever, there is an adequate means of dealing with them, and it can be a third party or whatever, but it just needs to be transparent to who's communicating with whom. And I think the worst thing that can happen is that you hire a random PR agent monitoring your social media activities and then posting comments, but the agent doesn't know anything about your business or about you or about your customers and whatever, and everything seems kind of fake. So I think that's the danger, but I think you can solve that.
I did say there is, what's your goal with all of this? Say you are now today 3-people team and you're building something really awesome and you're really successful. In 3 years' time, you're like on top of between 100 and 1,000 people company, and now you're 2 or 3 layers above whoever is actually interacting with the customers and building the product. Say you have a goal to stay in touch with what your product is and stay in touch with consumers and how they use your product. There is nothing wrong with asking for advice or assistance, and there is nothing wrong from asking them out for a dinner or a coffee, and in this case maybe do talk about your product. So, it's a good problem to have, and you're too big to think, should I still continue? Obviously you can't continue in a personal relationship, but if you have a goal for it, if you want to make a PR stunt, so say you have 2 million customers and still you dine with one of them every evening, you can really turn that in a good PR story. And if that's your goal, like you want a PR to get even more customers, then it works. If that's your primary way of collecting feedback while you have 2 million customers, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, I think that especially for early stage startups, creating that connection with the clients, with the customers is very important, because once you make them feel, you get, especially the first ones, you create that special connection, and they will be with you and promote you and spread the word forever. So when you start your company, if you create that connection, like get out there, invite them for coffee, and be open to them, be transparent as an organization. They'll be with you like Google. Now they don't need to go, for coffee, because they always get feedback from everybody. You see everybody commenting, like they know what people are thinking about them. And they always get feedback from their users just because people like them and, they like to give them feedback.
And yet, the best breakfast I have in London is in Google's office.
Nice. Do you have questions?
I sat in the back during the last session. I saw guys raising hands, like due to these slides, we can't see anything. So if you have a question and you're at the back, shout.
No questions. Okay, there's 1, 2. Okay, I'm going. Thank you. Hello?
Hello, my name is Dumitru. I'm founder of Rently, a local startup in Romania. I talked with a lot of mentors past year when I launched, and before, early, when we had just an idea. But I had some problems. All mentors have interests, and they give you some advices that are helpful for them and not for your startup. It's an edge, how to judge and how to take these advices.
I think theoretically you're right, but let's go back one day. Yesterday we had this mentoring session here, and I would say the only interest I had was to help the startups, because I don't have any share in the company or anything else. I mean, the only interest that I could have is that I would want to buy the product that they would just pitch to me. I believe if you talk to, mentors just openly and share your concerns or whatever, you can figure out pretty quickly if he or she has an agenda that is not aligned with yours. And if that's a concern that you have, you're probably right with a certain person, because otherwise you wouldn't get that feeling, but then it's probably not the right mentor for you. Yeah, because usually what we said, I mean, nobody as a mentor, the likelihood that you get rich because of this one single investment where you get equity simply because for your time, what you invest, I mean, the equity that you get is usually very, very, very small. And you would have to find the next Twitter or Facebook so that you get really rich. So I would say most mentors are not in it for the money, for their advice.
Everybody's biased and they're limited by what they know, what they've done, and so on. People tend to be pretty honest when they're excited. When you sit down with a mentor, quickly tell them something that's really cool, really awesome about you, about your team, about what you do. Get them excited. People will be more honest that way. And you have to do that within between 30 and 60 seconds.
I think that's called the hook. Sorry, is it Dimitri? I can't see you anymore, but yeah. When we're coaching companies at Startupbootcamp, I mean, if you're talking to 100 mentors in a month, let's say, we consider the startup's job to consider all of the advice, aggregate it, and then crap out the right answer. But sometimes that's really tough to do. So maybe look at how you're accumulating all this feedback. Write some notes down, but at the end of the session with a mentor, take the 2 or 3 highest level takeaways, and then take a day and go to a park or a museum or something and read through all the notes and try to figure out your way forward. Because I think the worst thing that could happen is that you just leave the whole situation confused. So as long as you can actually chart a way based on relatively good aggregated information, you should be fine.
Yeah, there are a lot of people out there, that like to play the role of the mentor, but they are not necessarily a mentor. So you have to do your research, and usually ask other people, have you had contact with this guy? And look in their network and see who they know and ask them, how is your relationship with this mentor? And is he giving you good feedback? And obviously the background of the mentor, this is a very important issue for me because I had issues with mentors before. But focusing on the good mentors and the quality ones, they can help a lot in a startup. And also, do not focus only on high-profile people. High-profile mentors, like the CEO of Facebook. You want him as your mentor, and you go for it, because you are building up a networking platform. Just look for people that actually know what they're talking about. Not that the CEOs don't know what they're talking about. They do, but become friends with them, and that's when they will help you the most, I think, if you have a personal connection with them and your clients and your investors. Just be nice, I guess.
I'll say on a closing mark, because I see we have 15 seconds, in addition to be nice, be open.
Yeah, transparent.
And I actually told a startup yesterday during the mentor session a quote that I just read, which was something like, don't ask the question if you're not open for the response. And a startup was asking me and my co-mentor a couple of questions, and we were giving responses, and he physically closed his arms, and he said, well, I don't know if that's right, and we kind of said, well, why are you asking this question? So I'd say if any of you are in the mentoring sessions today, try to open up and not necessarily take the advice, but consider the advice based on their background. It is something that really helps, and it helps me when I'm receiving from advice from my mentors as well.
And the one thing that I think is very important to take away for you guys is you're in the driver's seat. You have to be proactive about finding the right mentors, finding the right investors, finding your clients, whatever. I mean, it all comes down to, working the phones, writing emails, approaching people. If you don't take this opportunity, you're missing out on something, and it's your responsibility because you're the managers of the companies.
So lastly, guys, don't hesitate, and I think I speak on behalf to contact me or Andrew or Jens. If you feel like you need a mentor, just reach out to us, the contacts with the organizers, or during the mentorship sessions we gave you our cards. So just reach out to us, and we'll be happy to help you.
Okay, thank you, guys. Thank you very much for your time.